close your eyes after a long day, have you ever wondered, why are there memories from decades ago that still appear so clearly, while you can't seem to recall what you ate yesterday? In the video, Memory Pathways, How the Brain Stores Time, we'll slowly walk through the secret trails inside the brain, where the smell of old coffee, the sound of an old radio, a held hand, a loss are encoded into deeply personal time markers. You'll understand why time seems to pass faster as we grow older, why a few small moments become eternal, and most importantly, how we can gently choose to preserve the things that help us feel more at peace each night. If this resonates with you, please subscribe to the Smart Sleep channel to continue this journey together. Maybe tonight, as you lie down, the bedside lamp softened and the room one shade quieter than in the daytime, you'll notice something very strange. Your memories have never appeared in neat order like the dates on a calendar hanging on the wall. They don't show up as the 12th of June 1983, then the 5th of September 1994 in tidy sequence. More often, it's the smell of morning pastries in your mother's kitchen long ago, suddenly flooding back in the middle of a night in a small apartment in California, or the sound of the New York subway when you were 30 echoing inside the hum of the heater this winter in a quiet Midwest town. The brain doesn't run on a timeline. It is quietly weaving its own map of time, memory pathways braided through smells, colors, light, faces, touches, losses, blazing sunrises, and even those late afternoons that seemed like nothing special. Deep inside, the hippocampus, a small region tucked on both sides of your temples, acts like an architect, silently designing that map, not by the straight rules of the calendar, but by context. Where you were, who you were with, what you heard, how you felt. It doesn't just store what happened, it records the surrounding context, as if each memory were a room with its own scent, its own lighting, its own soundscape, its own emotion. When you remember the evening you sat on the porch listening to your father tell war stories, the brain doesn't open a file named Day XX, Year XX. It brings you back to the feel of the wooden planks under your hand, the sound of insects, his low voice, the faint chill of the night sky, and the feeling of safety that, back then, you probably didn't even have a name for. Modern science tells us long-term memory, especially memory for life events, episodic memory, is built by linking time to space and emotion. The hippocampus is like a guide, taking each tiny fragment of information, images, sounds, smells, sensations on the skin, heartbeat, the meaning you attach to that moment, and packing them into a contextual bundle. Later, when just one small detail repeats, like an old perfume in an elevator, the brain can instantly open the whole memory room tied to it. There is no straight timeline, only connecting pathways, from someone's hand to a shaft of sunlight, from that sunlight to a wooden chair, from the chair to a sentence that changed you. What's fascinating is that, in that map, the brain favors what is repeated every day without asking our permission. It quietly marks the routes most often used, the paths of familiar worries, of self-blaming phrases, of an old song, of the habit of reading a few lines before sleep, of calling a loved one, or of picking up the phone and scrolling endlessly. Everything we repeat becomes a bolder stroke on the map, signaling to the brain, this matters. Remember this well for me. You may not recall the exact dates of those exhausting working years, but you remember very clearly the feeling of always rushing, always tense, always afraid to be wrong because that state was trained into your brain over many years. Conversely, sometimes just a few rare summers by a quiet lake, a few unhurried dinners, or the moments you allowed yourself to slow down and truly be present with your family, shine vividly in memory because they carried a full, distinct emotional context. Tonight, as you lie listening to these words, perhaps a piece of your own memory is opening. A living room with thick carpet, an old big TV, the whole family gathered for the evening news, or a Texas porch with a creaking wooden chair and a glass of iced tea in your hand, or a small kitchen in Boston with the kettle whistling, the smell of toast, or an autumn street lined with red maple leaves where you once walked hand in hand with someone. All of these are coordinates on your map of time, showing that your life is not measured only by the year you were born, the year you retired, or the year you lost someone you loved, but also by the quiet layers of context your brain has devotedly preserved. When we understand this, we begin to see a gentle yet powerful truth. Each passing day, whether at 50, 70, or 85, we are still quietly extending our own memory map. That map does not stop because our hair is grey or our steps slow down. The hippocampus can still create new pathways if we offer it meaningful moments, an honest conversation, a new habit that supports health, a still afternoon simply listening to the wind outside the window, a moment of daring to say I am grateful for, even very softly. On the other hand, if each night we end the day with familiar worries, with noisy news feeds, with replayed old mistakes, the brain also notes, this is an important route, reinforce it, not because it is cruel, but because it follows a very honest rule. What repeats is what is worth keeping. Have you noticed? Some worries come from very far back, a harsh remark long ago, one failure, someone who left long since, but as long as you unconsciously touch them, repeat them in your heart night after night, the brain keeps that path lit up like a highway always open. Meanwhile, small moments of gentleness toward yourself, of pride in something you tried your best at, if they appear only briefly and are ignored, become dim alleyways quickly covered in dust. This places in our hands a question that is light but not weak at all. If the brain favors what is repeated, then what are we unconsciously rewarding each day on our memory map? Those lines that say, "I'm nothing anymore, everything is getting worse. I'm old, too late now." Or the moments of gratitude that we can still hear the wind, see the evening light, still have someone to call by name, still have the ability to learn something new even slowly but steadily at 45, 60, 75 or beyond. This question is not to scold you for what's already past, but to suggest that you still have the right to influence how your brain stores time. You cannot rewind and edit the old tapes, but you can decide, starting tonight, which path gets one more step, and which path you'll let grass grow over so that other light can shine in. Every small pre-sleep ritual, no need for grandeur, no need to change your life in 7 days, just very human. 2-3 slow breaths, a gentle question. What, however small, is worth my gratitude today? A beautiful memory recalled and smiled at is a signal you send to the hippocampus. Mark this a little more clearly. If, night after night, before closing our eyes, we only replay what we regret, who hurt us, what we fear tomorrow, the brain will believe that is the center of the map. But if we gently shift the focus, sprinkling in a few bright points, the image of a grandchild laughing, a heartwarming phone call, some small thing we did kindly for someone, the feeling of our body settling safely into bed, these new routes become clearer, easier to find, turning into main roads we can return to when we need shelter. This does not mean denying sadness or pretending everything is fine. On the contrary, it means recognizing we have the right not to let pain monopolize the map. Neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change connections based on experience. Tonight, we might call it something simpler: the right to choose what deserves to stay longer within us. Perhaps you have lived through years when memory is full of sirens, the smell of hospitals, rejection letters, family arguments. Those are real, and they deserve respect as part of your story. But woven among them, there may also have been moments when someone held your hand and said nothing. A lifelong friend texted to check in. A morning you woke and realized you were still here. If tonight, before sleep, you allow yourself to walk those memory paths more selectively, more gently, you are quietly training your aging brain to favor what nourishes you instead of only what makes you shrink. And who knows, years from now, when a certain soap scent, a song, or a gust of wind at the window touches you, what returns may not be only loss, but an entire map of time in which you repeatedly chose to stand on the side of your own peace. Tonight, as you prepare to close your eyes, see this not only as the end of a day, but as a very small pen placed in your hand. Each final thought, each image you allow to follow you into sleep is drawing another line on your memory map. It doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be dazzling, only real. And just a little kinder to yourself than yesterday. Let your brain, from tomorrow on, gradually favor the paths leading toward warmth rather than the dead ends of regret. Bit by bit, night after night, your map of time will change, not loudly, not dramatically, but truly and worthily. And if those memory pathways are like a glimmering network in the night, then someone must be quietly walking each lane with a small lamp, deciding which places stay lit longer, which are allowed to fade. That someone is the hippocampus. Tonight, let's come closer and ask what it is doing with our life. In the quiet room where you are lying, perhaps only the sound of the heater, a fan, or a faint brush of wind against the window remains. The body is slowing, the eyes wanting to close. But in your mind, there are still many fragments of today. A phone call, a news clip, dinner, a loved one's face, a slight ache in your knee, a vague worry about tomorrow. Not all of these will become long-term memories. Somewhere in your brain, the hippocampus sits like a diligent librarian, looking over each fragment, slowly choosing what goes onto the long-term shelves, what into a temporary tray to be let go. No noise, no show, no bells or flashing lights. It just works, day after day, night after night, across decades. Scientifically, the hippocampus is a small, curved structure shaped like a seahorse, deep in the medial temporal lobes. Its importance was first revealed when patients who lost the hippocampus could no longer form new memories, as if life continued, but no one was there to record it. For them, time became only an extended present. That story may sound distant, but it tells us something very close. All this time, for each moment of your life to become real in your memory, you have been quietly supported by this librarian, and perhaps you've never once thanked it. The hippocampus does not decide everything on its own. It can only do its job well when given the right raw materials, like a keeper of a library who can only preserve good books if they are brought in, titled, and arranged under gentle light. When you sleep enough, especially with stable deep sleep and dream sleep, the hippocampus has time to work with other brain regions to strengthen, arrange, and transfer what matters from the day into long-term storage in the cortex. When you move regularly, blood flow to the brain improves, neural connections are nourished, and that librarian has more energy and tools to stamp beautiful memories. When you learn something new, encounter a new idea, try a different activity, however small. The hippocampus is like being given new shelves, new corridors, instead of circling the same old aisles. One thing often saddens people in midlife and older age: the feeling that memory is not what it used to be. Forgetting an old actor's name, forgetting what you went to the kitchen to get, forgetting a small detail in a story. That feeling easily leads to worry, sometimes fear, that everything is deteriorating, that their librarian is exhausted, no longer working. But modern neuroscience, through serious research, shows that the hippocampus does not simply shut down after some fixed age. It can be weakened by chronic stress, lack of sleep, loneliness, illness. But it remains a region capable of change, of growing new connections in many older adults if treated with care. The librarian is still there, waiting to be given reasons to continue. Imagine one morning you decide to take a slow walk around the neighborhood instead of sitting longer in front of a screen. No need to run, no need for achievements. You notice the trees, the neighbor's new flower pot, the birds, the crisp or fresh air. For the hippocampus, that is a new map, a new chain of coordinates, space, sensations, sounds. That is raw material for memories different from the repetitive sequence of chair, wall, screen. Or one afternoon you learn how to video call your grandchildren, clumsy fingers and all, their laughter, their small faces on the screen. Little snippets of conversation, all are recorded as worthy pieces, a book you read slowly, not to fully understand at once, just to feel you can still converse with the world. A new recipe you try, an old jazz track you listen to again. With each such choice, the quiet librarian in your brain nods. This is a book worth keeping. Conversely, if each night ends with straining your eyes over bad news, endless arguments, replaying all the things that made you angry, or repeating old self-criticisms, the hippocampus still does its job. It marks those roots as important, to be reinforced. Not because the brain wants to hurt you, but because that is how learning works. What is repeated often and paired with strong emotion is prioritized. The librarian doesn't know it is adding to your suffering. It only sees that you spend much of your attention on those pages. It sounds harsh, but it is also the doorway to a new choice. You are at an age where you have traveled far, witnessed both radiance and loss. Your hippocampus is a vast library with countless rooms, shelves, boxes, doorways. Of course, there are floors filled with heavy things, breakups, losses, hospital rooms, medical reports, financial worries, words that hurt and still echo some nights. No one asks you to erase them, and you don't have to pretend they don't exist. But in that same library there are other floors, outings with small children, summers at the lake, moves that worked out, the first evening in a new apartment, the smell of pastries you baked, shared laughter at the table, moments when you surpassed what you once thought you couldn't survive. They have not vanished. Often, you've just not visited for a long time. One small daily choice for the hippocampal librarian might be simply this: before sleep, instead of letting your mind spin endlessly along the worst images, you close your eyes and intentionally name one good thing from the day. It doesn't have to be big. It could be, today I answered a call I usually avoid, or I walked 10 extra minutes, or I told an old story that made my grandchild laugh. When you do this consistently, you are handing the librarian a note. These are the pages to preserve carefully. Over time, The memories prioritized are not just of hardship, but also of your capacity to face it and your gentleness toward yourself. Sleep is when the librarian works most efficiently, in those hours when you let your body rest. The brain does not shut down. It reviews the day's data, strengthens important connections, discards trivial noise. If we constantly cut sleep short, replacing it with blue light and alertness, we are making that librarian work in a dark, cluttered room. Over time, the filing gets messy. Conversely, when you allow yourself to go to bed a bit earlier, create a simple ritual, dimming the lights, reducing stimulation, listening to something gentle, breathing deeply, your body understands. It is time to hand things over to the inner team. That is not weakness. It is an intentional act to protect your ability to remember, to learn, and to keep hold of who you are. Movement works the same way. It doesn't have to be competitive. A body that moves regularly is a gift to your blood vessels, to oxygen flow, to the nutrients feeding the hippocampus. Studies have repeatedly suggested that walking, light cycling, gardening, and appropriate stretching can support the structure and function of this region in older adults. You might think, at my age, what is there left to learn? But it is precisely new learning. Even tiny skills like using an app, learning a few words in another language, practicing a song, trying to write down a memory that trains the librarian to understand the library is still open, not closed. Tonight, as you listen to these words and feel your eyelids growing heavy, picture your hippocampus as a gentle keeper, sitting in the grand library of your life. Around are shelves of memories stretching from childhood to this very day. This keeper does not scold, does not belittle, does not care how old you are. They only quietly ask one simple question. Today, what do you most want me to keep? One very small answer, if repeated, can change how that library is arranged for the next 10 years. You do not have to erase all the sad pages. They belong to the story, but you can keep them from taking over the storefront. You can move pages of gratitude, courage, and peace closer to the light with small choices. One more step taken, one fuller night's sleep, one new thing learned, one kinder thought about yourself before you drift into the dark. One day, 2 days, you may notice nothing. But like any great library, new order is created through very ordinary actions, patiently repeated. As you close your eyes, let that question stay with you, light as your breath. If the hippocampus is the quiet librarian of my life, then starting tomorrow, which pages will I place in their hands to preserve for the coming decade? No noise, no rush, just a whisper to yourself, soft enough to lull you to sleep, deep enough to be remembered tomorrow. So if the hippocampus is the careful librarian choosing what goes on the long-term shelves, who decides which books get bound in bold red and labeled "Never Forget," why do ordinary days blur past while a few moments cling to us for life? Perhaps, as you hear this question, one image comes immediately. You don't have to try. It might be your wedding day, when that person waited at the end of the aisle and your hands trembled. Or the morning a doctor said a short sentence and your life changed direction. A tight hug at the airport. Or the night you sat alone in a parking lot, not sobbing out loud, just gripping the steering wheel, knowing you had just lost something. What's striking is, these moments are not necessarily big by the world's measure. TV did not report them, papers did not record them, but in your brain, they are marked as anchor points, emotional landmarks from which other memories are strung. From a neuroscience point of view, the quiet figure behind these anchors is the amygdala. a small almond-shaped cluster deep in the brain responsible for processing emotion, especially fear and vigilance, but also playing a crucial role in how we remember what deeply touches us. The amygdala does not keep a diary in words. It records in intensity. Whenever something makes your heart beat faster, your eyes widen, your throat tighten, your chest warm or go cold, whether from good news or bad, it is activated. It sends a signal. Pay attention. This is not ordinary. Remember it. And when the amygdala speaks up, the hippocampus listens. Whatever passes through the door of strong emotion has a greater chance of being stamped deeply into memory. That is why you can forget countless meals but remember clearly the dinner when someone said they were leaving. You forget many commutes but recall every second of that small accident years ago. Or you forget many church visits but remember perfectly the day your grandchildren knelt beside you and you placed your hand on their heads in blessing. These emotional anchors are not random. They are part of the biological system that helped our ancestors survive. Remember where danger lies, where safety lies, what caused pain or profound joy. So next time we react faster, wiser. Importantly, the amygdala does not only respond to fear, it responds to any strong emotion, fear, anger, shame, but also reverence, gratitude, deep tenderness, the feeling of being loved. The problem is, in modern life, especially after we've lived through many losses and burdens, negative emotions often speak louder and bolder. Noisy news, times we were hurt, sudden failures, emergency room nights, bills, cold words, all come with signals of danger. Beware. The amygdala does not reason at length, it just tags. If for many years the most repeated and emotionally intense signals are fear, anxiety, anger, then our memory map accumulates many anchors in those colors. You may see this in yourself. Some things ended long ago, but one small detail, now a voice tone like someone's, a hospital smell, a look like the person who hurt you pulls up a whole chain of memories. Your heart drops, your breathing changes. That is not weakness, that is an anchor doing its job. The brain is saying, be careful. Remember, last time this came with pain. But there is another kind of anchor, quieter and less often mentioned, anchors of gratitude and gentleness. The day you stood still, watching a newborn grandchild sleep, and realized you were witnessing a new beginning for your family. The afternoon you took a call you thought would bring bad news, but instead heard, everything is fine. The moment someone held your hand in the hospital and said nothing, only, I'm here. These moments are also strong enough to light up the amygdala, but differently. Instead of summoning an army of vigilance, they signal, this is precious. Don't overlook it. If we allow ourselves to fully feel and acknowledge them, such moments can become positive anchors. Each time we recall them, we don't only remember the event, we are reminded that our life is not only a chain of losses, but also a chain of times we were held. So the soft but profound question for you at 45, 60, 75 or beyond is, are we letting fear or gratitude decide what is carved into us forever, not by what we say, but by what we truly pause to feel, to revisit in our minds each night? Neuroscience does not promise that we can erase painful anchors like deleting a computer file. Major shocks, accidents, war, abuse, separation can leave deep, lasting marks. But research on memory and emotion shows the way we retell the story of those anchors, the way we place them within the wider context of our life, can change how they affect the present. The amygdala is activated not only by events, but by the meaning we attach to them. A memory of failure can remain forever as proof I am useless if, every time you revisit it, you focus only on shame. That same memory, seen later through another lens, I survived that. That's when I learned to listen to myself more, still carries emotional weight, but its color shifts. It stops being an anchor that drags you down and becomes a stone you can stand on to look back at your journey. Imagine that in your memory library there are two kinds of anchors. One, rusty, sharp stakes that cut you whenever you brush past. The other, smooth stone markers which, when touched, still let you feel the weight of the years, but also the steadiness and the sense of, I made it through this stretch. Both kinds begin as events charged with strong emotion. The difference lies, over time, in which we choose to tend, to revisit, and what story we tell around them. At an age where you have lived long enough to witness several turns of history, economic crises, medical advances, elections, births and deaths, you have a great advantage over the young. You have rich data to compare. You know that what once felt like the end of the world sometimes turned out to be just a chapter. You know that after very cold winters there is still spring, even if that year the snow lingered. Your amygdala has been activated many times, but your hippocampus and other regions have also gained experience in placing those anchors within a wider picture. If now, before sleep, you give yourself just a few small minutes to recognize, among the anchors that never fade in my life, which are anchors of gratitude, you are actively adjusting which emotions will guide the rest of your path. Maybe you remember the first day you set foot in this country with empty hands, trembling yet stepping forward, an anchor of courage. Maybe you remember the day the doctor said, "There's no more tumor," an anchor of relief. Maybe you remember the night you lost someone dear, and a neighbor brought over hot soup without many words, an anchor of human kindness. If such anchors are named, retold, cherished, they send a signal to the amygdala. These emotions matter too, not only fear. And from there, in future activations, the brain doesn't just rehearse shrinking away. It also remembers that you have been held, that you have overcome. Tonight, as the room softens, I invite you to do something very small, not a heavy exercise, just a short walk through a few of your own anchor points. Think of 3 moments in your life that you remember down to the smallest detail. Let even the painful ones appear. No need to push them away. Then, among them, look for at least one moment tied to gratitude, no matter how small. It might be when someone got you to the ER just in time, when a loved one forgave you, when you escaped death on the highway without quite knowing how, when you looked around the dinner table and suddenly realized, this is my family. Not perfect, but they're mine. Just one such anchor is enough. Stay with it for a few extra breaths. Let your amygdala fully feel. This is also a strong emotion. This also deserves to be carved deeply. Doing this does not erase the anchors of fear, but it begins to rebalance. It reminds your emotional nervous system that life is not only a danger zone, but also a place that has quietly held you many times. Over time, if each night you end the day by choosing a gratitude anchor to touch right before handing everything over to sleep, the connections between your amygdala and positive memories will grow stronger. Fear will still have its place, but it will no longer monopolize the steering wheel. And that is exactly where science meets self-development, not through slogans, but through real mechanisms. What is deeply felt, repeated, and infused with meaning shapes how the brain prioritizes memory. You cannot change the fact that you have lived through very dark days, but you can decide, starting tonight, not to give fear the exclusive privilege of engraving permanent letters in your heart. You can give gratitude, kindness, and your own resilience the chance to become clear anchors, so that in the years ahead, when memory reaches back, it will not find only shadows. Before you drift into sleep, let a very gentle question remain in your mind. In the notebook of the days that never fade in my life, which page am I placing at the very front? The page of fear or the page of gratitude? The answer doesn't need to be spoken. It only needs tomorrow and the day after that. Each night, a slight leaning of your heart toward what makes you warmer. The rest, your amygdala and your brain will know how to continue writing. If emotional anchors decide what is deeply engraved, then what decides that we are pulled back into the past in just 1 second? Without warning, why can a whiff of old soap, a distant radio, or the feel of clean sheets throw open an entire room of memory that has been silent for decades? Tonight, as you lie a little more still, let us walk slowly through that door. Let your mind pick any scent. Pastries baking in the oven, the must of old book pages, the disinfectant smell of a hospital, morning coffee, the perfume of someone you once loved, the body wash of a child. No need to force recall, just notice whether any of these, the moment it appears, pulls along a whole scene, a face, a period of your life. That is how the brain truly operates. It does not store your life as bullet point sentences, but as sensory shortcuts, especially smell. Biologically, smell is a special sense. Sense signals don't take the long route through rational centers before reaching emotion. They go almost directly into very ancient brain regions. The amygdala, the hippocampus, the same centers of emotion and memory we spoke of earlier. That's why when you smell pumpkin pie with cinnamon, you don't just think, that's cinnamon. Your whole body may soften as you remember your mother's kitchen, the oven door ajar, autumn air on the porch, the rustle of leaves. Smell is a shortcut key, unlocking images, sounds, and feelings all at once. No translation into words required. The brain linked them from the beginning. In many older adults, these shortcuts remain vivid, even when recent memory sometimes slips. You may forget where you left your keys yesterday, but the smell of an old laundry soap can take you back to your first apartment as a young couple. Creaking wooden floors, a tiny sink, evenings counting every dollar and still able to laugh. You may not recall the exact date of a crisis, but the smell of antiseptic can pull you straight into the night you kept vigil at the hospital. Each stare, each neon light, your hand resting on a blanket. The feel of clean sun-dried sheets may conjure your mother, or the partner who once carefully kept that home. These memories don't need narration, because the body has remembered for you. When we understand this, we can be kinder to ourselves. It's not that my memory is getting worse for no reason. Often, it's that different memory channels are at work. The brain does not prioritize words like bureaucratic files. It prioritizes what is tied to the body, to felt presence, to the moment of, I am fully here. Smell, sound, touch, skin temperature, light. These are the raw materials. Words come later, like a summary. Think of the things that formed the backdrop of your younger years. The morning news on the radio, rock songs or country music, church bells, trains, the grinding of a coffee mill, the pop of a soda can, the spring-hinged screen door slapping its frame. Each sound, if linked to a time, a person, a feeling, can become a shortcut. The feel of a thick towel in a hotel long ago, the too firm pillow at your grandmother's house, wet grass under bare feet, the cold of a car window on school mornings. When fully felt, Those details were stored as sensory codes, so that later, a small touch in the present can trigger a whole chain of memory. So if we let the last hour of the day be packed only with harsh screen light, blaring news, greasy food smells, leaving no space for the body to feel safe and at ease, we are unknowingly letting our pre-sleep shortcuts wire themselves to fatigue and anxiety. Years from now, this stretch of life might be remembered as a grey strip, sitting in front of a screen, fretting about medications, news, bills. Not because there was nothing good, but because we didn't pause long enough to mark those good things with our senses. The good news, even at 60, 75, 85, the brain can still create new links between smell, sound, bodily sensation, and feelings of safety and comfort. It can still etch this age as a phase of depth, gentle rituals, and its own quiet peace. Not just a list of doctor's appointments. Tonight, let's see what tiny thing we can do to gift the future a few more comforting memories. You don't need to turn your bedroom into a spa. Just choose one or two sensory cues you'll repeat each night as a message to your brain. This is a safe zone. It might be a very light scent, chamomile tea, clean pillows, a bit of gentle essential oil if your doctor has no concerns, or simply a familiar soap smell you like. It doesn't need to be strong, just enough so that when you lie down, your nose recognizes, it's this smell again, this bed, this place where I'm allowed to rest. If every night you let yourself sink into that scent for a few deep breaths, over time, it becomes a shortcut to safety and sleep. Later, just catching it briefly, your body will remember, this is when I can let go. Add to that the sense of touch, sheets that are clean, reasonably soft, a pillow adjusted so your neck doesn't hurt, a light blanket. This is not luxury, it's a precise biological signal. This body is being respected. When your skin meets something comfortable, your nervous system reads a different message than when you fall asleep in a chair or lie in harsh light and noise. To the brain, these details are data. It learns that bedtime is a safe, gentle time when memory work can unfold. You can also choose a ritual sound, not news or arguments, but a slow piece of music, the steady hum of a fan, the soft noise of an air filter, or a calm voice telling a story, like the one you're hearing now. Repeat it each night, not perfectly, just with some consistency. Over time, it becomes an auditory shortcut into that in-between state where the hippocampus begins sorting memories and the amygdala eases its guard. More important than any of this is the attitude you bring. If you do these things with the mindset, I must sleep well so I don't get sick, your body still hears command and worry. If you do them with some kindness, after all these years, I give myself the right to have 10 gentle minutes before sleep. The message is completely different. The brain is very sensitive to the difference between being forced and being cared for. You cannot lie to your nervous system, but you can choose a kinder whisper. Now imagine one day, 5 or 10 years from now, you sit in an armchair in the late afternoon light, filtering through the curtains, tired but calm. Someone changes the sheets, washes the blankets. The room carries the same familiar clean scent you're using tonight. Suddenly, it's not just fresh laundry, a whole string of evenings when you gave yourself 10 minutes to breathe deeply, listen softly, think of those you love, thank your body for trying will rush back. This chapter of your life, instead of being remembered only by lab results, will be marked by a feeling. That was when I learned to sleep decently again. I was less harsh with myself, That is a gift you send back to your future self. Conversely, if your nightly shortcuts are always cold white light, blaring TV, heavy food smells, arguments, or bad news, then years later, meeting those same cues, your body may tense automatically. They've been paired with vigilance, with weight. No need to blame yourself, just understand. Each night, you choose the materials of how this period will be remembered, and most of those choices are small and within reach. Some will say, "But my life now has too much to worry about. How can I be relaxed?" True. No one denies the hard facts of age, health, money, family. Precisely because we can't control everything, the small pieces we can touch are precious. A warm cup of tea with the stove turned off on time. 5 minutes not reading any more news. 3 deep breaths in the smell of clean sheets. 1 whispered thank you to your body, even if it aches today. These do not erase worries, but they create a parallel layer of memory. The memory that in the midst of difficulty, you still knew how to treat yourself kindly. Tonight, before sleep, if you'd like to try, do something simple. When you lie down, instead of immediately spinning into thought, notice 3 things. What scent is around you? What is the smallest sound you can hear? And where on your body you can feel comfortable support? Your neck, your back, your heels. Just recognize and acknowledge them. You don't need to meditate well, only to be present for a few seconds. By doing so, you're helping your brain associate this moment with safety signals. You're building a new shortcut. Night, safe, allowed to rest. Then let one very soft question slip in before you go under. If one day I remember this age only by a smell, a sound, a feeling on my skin, what do I want that feeling to be? The answer doesn't have to be right or impressive, only honest. And tomorrow night, you can shift half a step closer to it. The rest, your brain with all its very human wisdom will quietly register, weaving new memory paths in the direction you've chosen. If senses and emotions are shortcuts, pulling us back into memories, there is a subtler question. Do the things we recall truly match what happened? Or have they been edited in our minds? And if they've been edited, who is that silent editor? Tonight, as you lie still and listen, let one memory float up. Maybe your graduation day, your first move, a warm family gathering, or a fierce argument. Let it appear exactly as it now shows up in your mind. The faces, the words, the details, the weather, the smells in the room. Then, very gently, ask yourself, am I sure it all happened exactly like this? Or is this the version that has been told, retold, rethought so many times it has become the official cut in my head? Scientifically, our brains do not work like security cameras. They do not record every second neutrally. Instead, they select, compress, splice, fill gaps, highlight some details, and discard countless others. This isn't a flaw or distortion. It's an intelligent strategy to save energy and keep us functional. If we stored every detail of decades of life, we'd drown in data. So the brain keeps the main storyline, meaning, context, dominant emotion. When we remember, it doesn't open a full video file. It reconstructs the scene from existing fragments. You can see this in family conversations. When everyone recalls an old event, each person tells it a bit differently. One swears it was summer, another insists it was autumn. One says, Mom was furious. Another remembers, she was just quiet. Not everyone is lying. They're all pulling from slightly different edits of the same event. The hippocampus brings in fragments. The amygdala colors them emotionally. The prefrontal cortex, where complex thinking lives, fits that story into how we see ourselves and the world. Each recall is both replay and tiny re-edit. Details that fit the meaning we believe about ourselves are kept. Details that don't fit are more easily blurred. This mechanism once helped our ancestors survive. They had to remember quickly, don't go near that cliff. It's dangerous, not the exact pattern of clouds that day. Today, the same mechanism shapes how we see our life. As a story with motifs, roles, repetitions. If for many years we have unconsciously told one version, I always get left behind, I'm always wrong, I always have to carry everything. Then over time, memory fragments that support that verdict are favored. Meanwhile, moments in which we were chosen, loved, helped, recognized, if they don't fit the familiar script, are easily labeled exceptions and fade. This isn't to scold you for thinking negatively, but to point out a gentle, crucial truth. The life you remember at this age is already an edited cut, and from tonight on, that cut can still be adjusted, not by inventing new events, but by letting forgotten pieces return to their rightful place. Think of one event you've long used as proof of some harsh story about yourself, maybe a failed business, and you concluded, I have no head for anything. A divorce, and you concluded, I'm not worth staying with. A child moving away, and you concluded, I was a bad parent. Each time that memory is replayed with that verdict, your brain is compressing and cutting to fit, keeping details that support the sentence, dropping those that don't. You may forget times you handled things well, people who trusted you, love you gave, times when things did not collapse as badly as you feared. But with the very same mechanism, if one day you allow yourself to revisit that old event with a different question, the story can soften. Instead of, I failed, so I'm worthless, it might become, I dared to try in a very hard situation, and I learned my limits. Instead of, the marriage ended because I wasn't enough, it might be, two people, at that time, could no longer reach each other, each carrying their own wounds. Instead of, my child left because I wasn't good, it might be, my child needed to live their own life, and my love is not measured only by physical distance. Each time you retell it that way truthfully, but with kindness, the brain notes, this story has another reading. New connections, new emphases are made. The key is this: memory is narrative, not legal transcript. It is always selective. The brain conserves energy by leaning on familiar scripts when reconstructing the past. The more those scripts are repeated, the more rigid they become. Ask yourself quietly, with no one listening, what script am I using to edit my life? Is it one that makes me softer, more understanding with myself and others, or one that makes me harder, closed, self-condemning? You have the right to doubt absolute stories about yourself, especially ones that start with, I always, or I never. The brain loves simplicity, so it squeezes everything into a few labels. But your real life, stretched across decades, is more complex than that. There were times you were brave, even in small ways, times you were selfish and realized it, times you were kind with no audience, times you were wrong and apologized. If your edit keeps only black pages or only white pages, it is unfair to who you really are. In the quiet of night, this is a good moment for a very light editorial move. Choose one painful memory you rerun like an overplayed clip. Just one. Don't drag everything up. You don't need to watch it from beginning to end again. Pause on one frame and ask, am I leaving anything out? Was there someone standing by me I've forgotten? Is there something in who I was then that I can now see differently? Is there anything I did as best I could within my limits that I am erasing now? Finding just one such detail already loosens the old cut. You are not rewriting history. You are restoring lines in a picture once overpainted in a single color. Each night, if you wish, you can do this with one small event. Add to that story a bit more understanding, a slightly less merciless angle. Gradually, your brain will update the version to, I have known hurt, mistakes, loss, but I have also known learning, love, effort. This doesn't erase responsibility. It allows you to be whole, not just a verdict. You can do the same with beautiful memories. Sometimes we compress them into snapshots of the good old days and then use them as a stick to beat the present. Nothing is like it used to be. Instead, tonight, if a good memory appears, let it stay in full. Not just I was young then, but I was brave enough to leave home. I raised children in scarcity. I carried a vitality then that still lives in me. Told this way, a good memory doesn't indict today. It becomes a quiet resource. If I've come through all that, I am not only what time has taken. At 45, 60, 80, the question, who am I, is not a luxury. It slips into each night when you face yourself in silence, and the answer is largely woven from the edits your brain is replaying. You cannot command it to erase all old scenes, but you can begin to choose in very small ways. Tonight I will not replay only the prosecuting version. I will try to tell the same story with the voice of someone who knows they lived within specific circumstances, with what they knew then, with a heart that has carried many scratches and still wanted to do right. Before sleep takes you, whisper one simple line to yourself. Tomorrow, if I remember my life again, I choose to tell it in a way that softens me toward myself and others. You don't have to fully believe it yet. Just accept that the brain, which has long been compressing, cutting, editing, can learn a kinder editing style. The rest, in the nights ahead, through the stories you choose to hear, the memories you choose to touch, the words you choose to speak to yourself. Your life story will slowly be recut, not to be falsely pretty, but to be more accurate to all you have truly been. Someone who has tried, has loved, has erred, has learned, and is still going. If daytime memories are quick, rough cuts thrown together in your head, drafts you can always retell differently, then the question is, where are they finished? Do things stop when we turn off the lights? Or is that when the most important silent department begins its real work? You lie there in soft darkness or in a faint spill of hallway light. Household noises have quieted, the street outside has slowed. For many people, this moment is just before sleep, an empty waiting room between waking and oblivion. But for the brain, especially as you enter deep sleep, this is when the secret post-production studio opens. Everything you saw, heard, thought, learned, and felt during the day, conversations with children and grandchildren, messages, faces in the hospital, lines from a book you read. Even what you heard in this video begins as temporary files on the neural desktop. Left as is, the desk would overflow. Nothing new could fit. The night shift studio sleep, especially deep sleep with its slow waves spreading across the cortex, has the job of gathering, selecting, moving what matters into long-term storage, and clearing noise. Scientists, placing electrodes to record the brain, see that during deep sleep, the brain does not shut off. Slow waves appear, like synchronized tides flowing across regions. These waves act as signals. Let's clean up, helping move information from the hippocampus, where new memories are held short-term, to the cortex, where long-term memories live. At the same time, subtle processes unfold at the synapses, the junctions between neurons. Some connections are strengthened, others turned down, no longer blasting too loud. This synaptic adjustment is one way the brain conserves energy, keeping essential circuits, trimming excess. If you picture your nervous system as a city of countless power lines, deep sleep is the night maintenance crew, checking which wires are overloaded, which are unused, what needs repair, what should be removed so the system doesn't blow. For memory, this means what you brushed against during the day, but that isn't important, will fade. What recurs with meaning will be etched more deeply. Sleep doesn't just close the day, it decides what of today you still have tomorrow. This matters for all of us, but it is especially delicate in our 60 seconds, 70 seconds, 80 seconds, when many begin to fear forgetting, to fear memory decline. The instinct is often to stay up, to control, to hold on. But cutting sleep, living in chronic sleep loss, is exactly what leaves the studio without time to do its job. The hippocampus cannot transfer files, which means new memories, a new name, a doctor's instruction, a small joy struggle to take hold. Incomplete synaptic cleanup leaves the brain like an unswept room. Biological dust not fully cleared, mental fatigue piling up. You may have felt a small version of this. After a short night, the next morning your head feels stuffed with cotton. What you read, heard, or planned yesterday seems to slip away. When young, the body can carry a few such nights. In the second half of life, the price is higher. Recovery takes longer. The nervous system is more sensitive. New memories cling less easily. Yet modern life often treats sleep as optional. Ill sleep later, sleep less. I'm old, I don't need much. Many, especially around or after retirement, let nights be filled with worries about health, money, loneliness, screens, and spiraling thoughts, shattering their sleep. They think they're just staying up to distract themselves, not realizing they're quietly cutting the budget for their own memory and learning. The gentle truth is, your brain at 60, 70 has not lost the ability to learn. Studies of older adults learning music, languages, drawing show neural connections can still change. But for that to happen, the night shift studio must still run. Slow waves must be allowed through. Synapses must be reshaped. In other words, decent sleep is not a luxury prize. It is a basic condition for your brain to keep writing new chapters. Try to remember, in your life, the periods when you slept relatively peacefully. Maybe your teenage years, maybe a summer in the suburbs, maybe the early years of building a family. Very likely those were also times when you felt your memory was good. You absorbed things quickly. Your emotions were flexible, not because being young is magically superior, but partly because back then your sleep was often deeper, longer, less interrupted by screens, late coffee, or piled up worries. Now, at this age, sleep quality can naturally change with physiology, waking more at night, sleeping more lightly, which only makes what we actively do to protect the sleep we still have more important. You don't need to force yourself into the golden 8 hours. Every body has its own rhythm. What matters more is the attitude. Do we treat sleep as a partner working with us, or as an intruder stealing our online time? If we see sleep as empty, useless space, well, fill it with stimulation, and the post-production studio will never get a full night shift. But if we see sleep as an editing room where past and present are reorganized so we can wake with a clearer memory map and steadier emotions, we will naturally want to make room for that night shift. Tonight, as you get ready for bed, try a tiny shift in perspective. Now is when I hand today over to the post-production team. You've lived, worried, loved, snapped, tried. You don't need to hold all of it yourself. The studio inside will choose what to keep, what to let go if you give it time and conditions. Those conditions are not complicated. Less late caffeine, less blue light close to bedtime, at least a short, quiet gap between getting into bed and closing your eyes. Instead of dragging the battlefield of news under the covers, one or two small rituals like you've heard earlier. A gentle scent, softer light, a few breaths, a grateful thought. All of them signal to the post-production team. You can begin. In deep sleep, new, pleasant memories have a chance to be strengthened. Today, if you had a moment watching your grandchild laugh, a kind exchange with a server, a slow walk in the park, a useful piece of information from your doctor, a story that moved you, then sleeping properly is how you give those things a place to live inside you. If you cut sleep short, those fragile good memories are more likely to stay as unsaved drafts and dissolve in the noise. At the same time, during sleep, waste products in the brain, the byproducts of neural activity, are cleared with the help of the brain's lymphatic system. Like opening windows and sweeping the house, when sleep is disrupted, this process falters. Feeling heavy-headed, foggy, low in spirit is easy to understand. In older adults, this is even more sensitive. Protecting sleep is not only about keeping memory fresh, it is also part of safeguarding the brain against unnecessary decline. It is not a guarantee against all illness, but it is something we truly can do. Maybe you've long seen yourself as someone who functions on little sleep. Maybe you were once proud of working through the night for years. Maybe now, because of pain, medication, worry, sleep is no longer easy. That's okay. No one is asking you to suddenly sleep long and deep like you did in your 20s. The only thing this night story invites you to try is to change your angle. Don't treat every minute of sleep as lost time, but as an investment in tomorrow's memory and clarity. If one night you only manage 4 or 5 hours, cherish them. Protect them from being shredded by a TV blaring all night or a phone glowing right on your pillow. If you wake in the middle of the night, be gentle with yourself. A few breaths, keep the light soft. Resist diving into the news that will send your amygdala ringing again. When you treat the sleep you do get as valuable, your brain understands that you're still giving the post-production team a chance, even a small one. And as in the earlier parts, here science meets self-development in a quiet place. The way we sleep says a lot about how we value our own lives. If we believe our memories aren't worth tending, our future not worth being clear and bright, we'll easily let anything disrupt our sleep. If we understand that each day we're still alive is precious material the brain needs time to store with care, we will start to see bedtime as a ritual of honoring the path we've walked. Before you drift fully into tonight, lay a light question on your chest like a warm hand. If sleep is the secret post-production studio of memory, am I giving that team enough time and quiet to work? Or am I accidentally cutting the budget for my most beautiful memories and my ability to learn new truths about myself at this age? No need to answer out loud. Just let tomorrow, when you turn off the light, be an act of siding with your brain, not stepping away from life. The slow waves will handle the rest, gently, steadily, as they have all the years you've walked through this world. If sleep at night is the post-production studio that lovingly tends each memory, keeping what deserves to stay, perhaps you've also wondered, why, as we grow older, does it feel like a whole year slips by in a blink? Why did childhood stretch like an endless road, while recent years feel thin as a few torn pages? Maybe you've sat in your living room, looking out the window, and suddenly realized, I don't know why it was just January, and now it's the end of the year. You mutter to yourself, another birthday, another winter, more doctor's appointments, more bills, a few messages from the kids and grandkids, a few similar dinners. Everything blurs into one long streak, without many markers. Meanwhile, when you think back to your teenage years, each summer was its own world, each school year its own stage. Every friend, every outing, every bus ride had its own color. Time then was wide, thick, layered. Now it feels compressed. From the brain's perspective, this isn't a random illusion. It reflects a specific mechanism. The brain measures time by the amount and novelty of information stored, not by the clock. When you live a day full of new things, your first day of school, first love, first time leaving home, first job, the hippocampus must build many new maps. The amygdala marks many emotional anchors. The senses are busy taking in strange smells, sounds, spaces. The night studio has an overflow of files. Looking back, that stretch of life has many highlights, chapters, scenes. The brain feels that period as long. In contrast, when one day copies the next, the same route, same chair, same TV, same conversations, same familiar worries, the brain doesn't need much storage. It recognizes, same pattern, and compresses, discarding details. A month feels like a week. A year feels like a month. Not because objective time speeds up, but because there are fewer new traces laid down. So in hindsight, that segment feels thin. This is not an accusation against aging. It's how the brain protects its energy. If every moment of a 70-year life were recorded with the intensity of age 18, we'd be overwhelmed. The brain is wise. When things are familiar, it shifts to power save. But in that wisdom lies a small downside. If we let every day slide by in the same grey backdrop, the memory of our later years can become a blurred strip. And that is something, at 45, 60, 80, we can still gently influence. Think of any year in your adult life. Maybe the year you moved house, changed jobs, welcomed your first grandchild, had surgery, or took a big trip. Even if it was exhausting, you remember that year more clearly than the even ones. Not because it was longer, but because its density of new experiences was higher. The brain had to fully switch on. Likewise, the years when you only orbited 3 points, bedroom, sofa, supermarket, with the same news, same meals, same worries, will be bundled into one block. When you look back, you only recall, that was when I was tired, but it's hard to separate days, months. In neuroscientific terms, this is a mix of how the hippocampus encodes experiences, the role of novelty in triggering dopamine, which flags this is worth remembering, and the compression of repeated memories. The good news, new here does not mean wild adventures, plane tickets, mountains, or acting against your nature. At 60, 70, 80, new can be tiny yet enough. A different route on your walk, a dish you've never cooked, a book outside your usual taste, a deeper question to a friend you've only chatted lightly with. An afternoon at a park instead of at home, listening to music you've never tried. Picture your life's memories as a bookshelf. If from 55 to 75 all the spines are the same grey, with no titles, no sections, it's easy to feel 30 years vanished. But if, in those years, you sometimes add a different spine, a green one, the year you started walking with your neighbour, a red one, the year you learned to use FaceTime to see your grandchild's face, a yellow one, the year you planted pots on the balcony, a purple one, the year you joined a reading group at church or the library. Those colours slice the line of time into segments with a recognizable face. When your brain looks back, there are more anchors. Time feels fuller, less like a blank hallway. You might think, at this age, what can I make new? But precisely now, small differences are enough to register. Changing your teacup, dropping one news channel, and adding a playlist of gentle jazz or classical you never noticed before. Really seeing the trees on the street you've lived on for decades, how many shapes, how the leaves change. Instead of only nodding at a neighbour, one day asking, "How has your day been?" Maybe that becomes a shared story you both remember. Each such new, if lived fully, and then left to sleep to be processed, becomes a small marker on the map, a coloured dot on the timeline. The crucial thing, novelty here, is not about proving you're still young, not about performance. It's a friendly gesture to your brain, in giving you something worth waking up for, worth storing, and a friendly gesture to your heart, in letting myself feel that today is not identical to yesterday, in at least one small way. Without that, days become copy-paste files. The brain, doing its job, compresses them. Then we sigh. Time flies. Time has flowed evenly. What's speeding is our sense of it, because we've stopped placing markers. Tonight, in the stillness of your bed, look back over the past year, not as a to-do list, but as coloured moments. How many small new things did you give yourself? Maybe the first time you tried a cafe in your neighbourhood, the first time you spoke honestly with your doctor, the first time you wrote a few lines in a notebook after years of not writing, the first time you told your grandchild something you'd never shared. If you see such moments, acknowledge them as little bright stones in the current. If you feel the year passed like grey smoke, that's okay. Simply notice it, gently, without blame. Notice it so that in the coming year, you can try something different. Some people, growing older, slowly lock themselves into a narrow orbit because society, family, or an inner voice says, at this age, that's enough. Day by day, everything circles the same tasks. They don't realize that the emptiness they feel comes not only from circumstances, but also from a brain no longer invited into anything new, while others at 70, 80 live quietly, without fuss. Yet each year still has at least one thing worth remembering. They might just walk one block farther, try a dish from another culture, attend a class at the local library, volunteer to call other seniors, or learn to use an app to see the night sky and name the constellations. That's not pretending to be young, it's respecting their own sense of time. At this age, you've come too far to let anyone else define what new must mean. You have the right to choose very gentle things. A new plant, a new sitting spot, a book you've never touched, a small habit like writing down. Each night, one thing you were curious about today, about your body, about history, about the universe, about the grandchild growing up in another country. If tomorrow you spend a few minutes finding an answer, that's already one step outside the old orbit. The brain loves curiosity. Dopamine linked to motivation and learning doesn't just appear for big wins. It also responds to just right newness. Giving yourself a little curiosity doesn't only create a memory marker, it rekindles your inner reward system. Time becomes less like a silent corridor, more like a series of rooms you've actually stepped into, even briefly. And as always, this science story comes back to something very human. The question isn't, is time fast or slow? But am I present enough to know I've just lived one more day? No one guarantees tomorrow, but if tonight, before sleep, you can recall one way today was even slightly different from yesterday, not spectacular, just real, then you've slowed your felt sense of time a little. You've refused to let this year be a copy of the last. Before your eyes close, make a tiny, quiet promise. Tomorrow, I'll give my brain one gentle new thing. Maybe I'll walk a different path to the mailbox. Ask the cashier one more kind question. Listen to one full classical piece instead of skipping, or sit 5 minutes watching light shift on the wall. So small, no one else notices, but enough that tomorrow night, there's one more colored dot to record. The coming years, if you have them, will, thanks to these dots, be more than a rushing grey band. They'll be a discrete map, proving that, to the very end, you kept choosing to live, not just count days. If adding tiny new things can make time thicker and more memorable, there's another question we can't avoid at night. What about the old things? The painful memories? Why do they keep returning, vivid and sharp, as if they happened just yesterday? The moment you hear this, an image may sting inside you. A hospital room with its familiar disinfectant smell, the last heated argument before someone walked out. A phone call carrying bad news, a mistake you've paid for, yet still judge yourself for. Strangely, many beautiful things fade, while these moments stand at the very front of memory, like scratches on glass. The more you try not to see them, the more they catch the light. First, let's be clear. You are not strange, not weak, not overthinking for no reason. The human brain has a natural tendency called rumination, and it's tightly tied to protection, not merely a bad habit. Rumination happens when the mind keeps circling painful situations, shame, regret, if-onlys, self-blame, replaying the same scene without finding a new ending. Neurologically, this involves the default mode network regions active when we're not focused externally, but turning inward, recalling, imagining, analyzing ourselves, wondering what others think of us. This network is not the enemy. It helps us have a sense of self, learn from experience, plan, and weave our lives into a continuous story. But under chronic stress and unsoothed wounds, it can shift from storyteller to prosecutor, dragging out the same memory, shining the same harsh light, issuing the same heavy sentence. Add to that the stressed body hormones, like cortisol, making the amygdala more sensitive to threat. Painful memories, especially those tied to shame, abandonment, loss, failure, get priority. From a survival lens, the brain is trying to help. Remember that, so you won't get hurt again. But its help can trap us. Instead of extracting wisdom and moving forward, we loop in. Why? How could I be so stupid? If only E done differently, until that memory becomes not just an event, but the title of our whole life story. Picture an old photo album. It holds many images. Good, bad, ordinary. Rumination is like pulling out the same painful photo every night. taping it to the cover, then sliding it back in, only to repeat tomorrow. Over time, you almost forget what else is in the album. You remember only that one picture. The scratch on memory is carved not only by the original event, but by how often we trace it. This isn't to scold you for torturing yourself. At 45, 60, 80, almost all of us carry unfairness. Words we wish unsaid, choices we wish reversed. At night, especially when tired, when chatter quiets, the default mode switches on like a gatekeeper, with time on its hands, pulling old files. If your life has lacked gentle voices, safe places to retell painful memories, the brain will use its strongest voice, harshness or panic. That's common, especially for those who've always been the strong one. Parent, provider, the one who must cope. What we can do is not force ourselves to forget. The more we command, don't think about it, the more the brain flags it as important. What we can do is learn a new way to look at those memories, to place them in a different meaning frame. Not fake, not sugar-coated, but softer, fairer, like adjusting the lighting on a photo. Not erasing, but changing how it feels. Start with a small scratch, not your deepest wound. A time you spoke harshly to someone you love. Perhaps every time you recall it, you jump to, "I'm a terrible person." That's your default network, shrinking your entire being to one moment. Tonight, if that memory appears, add back some context you left out. You were exhausted. You'd never been taught another way to speak. Maybe afterward you apologized, or tried to make amends in small ways, not as excuses, but for accuracy. By letting those details in, you're teaching your brain that this memory is not only proof of guilt, but also a starting point of learning. The feeling can still be sad, but less stabbing. The scratch remains, but its edges are duller. For deeper wounds, death, violence, betrayal, major loss, it would be wrong to say, just think positive. No, some things hurt, just to name. Here, adjusting the color means something else. Not painting over tragedy, but including elements that have always been there. Hidden. In that awful hospital night, was there a doctor or nurse who truly tried? A hand holding yours? A call that came at the right time? In the memory of a brutal breakup, were there earlier conversations? Patterns, both people's, woundedness, that now help you see it wasn't a simple verdict on your worth. In memories of your own mistakes, were there pressures, ignorance, loneliness that, if you saw in someone else, you'd forgive more easily than you forgive yourself. When you dare to see these, not to erase responsibility but to see the full picture, your nervous system receives a new message. That was more complex than the cruel label I've slapped on myself. Each recall with a fuller meaning weakens the link between that memory and pure self-condemnation, and strengthens its link with understanding painful, but more bearable. That takes time and repeated choices to speak to yourself differently. The default mode will still run. You can't, and don't have to, shut it down, but you can change the voiceover of the night program. If until now, lying down automatically summoned, "You ruined, you're not enough, you should have," then from tonight, when the scratch appears, try inserting one small line. "Yes, I failed there, but that is not the whole of me," or "The fact that this still hurts means I loved and cared deeply." Such lines sound simple, but repeated gently, they are how you retitle the clip, not changing the footage but the name, from "I am a failure" to "I am someone who failed and kept going." From "I was abandoned" to "I experienced abandonment, so I now cherish those who stay." Neuroscience shows that each time a memory is reactivated, it enters a soft window reconsolidation when its associated meaning can be updated. You don't alter the raw event, but you can add new understanding, new compassion. Over time, such recalls blunt the sharpest edges. The scratch remains, but it no longer slices your hand every time you touch it. At 45, 60, 90, you've seen enough to know life doesn't divide people into pure good or pure bad. You can use that wisdom to be more generous with yourself. That doesn't make you weak. It frees energy trapped in endless loops, so it can flow into the present. Learning, connecting, caring for a tired body, loving those still here. Tonight, if an old scratch resurfaces, don't panic. See it as a photo long left unadjusted. Take a slow breath and ask softly, where have I hung this picture in my life? Is it blocking other images? Is there any detail here? I've refused to see one that shows I tried, I loved, I did the best I could with what I had then. If yes, let that detail catch a bit more light. Then you can whisper, enough for tonight. The rest, I'll look at tomorrow. You don't need to resolve your whole past in one night. You only need to refuse to let one wound forever own the headline. As your eyes grow heavy, keep one question with you, soft as the blanket over you. If my brain tends to cling tightly to what hurts me, what else can I help it hold? So my life story isn't only about the scar. Carrying that question into sleep is a small, brave step toward a version of you who can embrace both wound and healing in the same breath. If memory scratches can quietly define how we see ourselves, there is an even subtler truth. The memories we choose to retell again and again unintentionally become the lens through which our children and grandchildren see the world. Have you ever wondered, how is my brain training the brains of the next generation? Picture an ordinary evening, a small living room, warm light, TV off, only the clock and the air conditioner humming. A grandchild sits on the rug, fiddling with a toy, looking up as you speak. Maybe they're your grandchild by blood or by heart. A neighbor's child. A young person at church or in your community. You begin with, back in my day. And at that moment, something very quiet happens. What you choose to pull from your memory vault is no longer just yours. It is slipping into the neural network of the listener, becoming part of their frame for life, people, and themselves. From a scientific view, we don't transmit specific memories via genes. The way we pass on eye color, genes can carry tendencies, temperament, sensitivity to stress, certain biological risks. But the stories we tell, the tone we use, the way we explain what happened to this family, this place, this life, those are what directly shape the map of meaning in the next generation's brain. Children and teenagers build their understanding of the world largely from what they hear repeated. What kind of people we are, whether others can be trusted, whether hardship is punishment or challenge, whether failure is an ending or a middle chapter. When you retell a memory over and over, you're not only strengthening that pathway in your own brain, you're also teaching the listener's brain. This is the kind of story that matters, that deserves to be remembered. The listener's amygdala responds to the emotion in your voice. Their hippocampus records the context. This living room, this face, this name, paired with this kind of feeling, that story becomes one of their anchors, whether a gentle one or a heavy one. If every, back in my day, opens into chapters of injustice, betrayal, people being bad, life being nothing but deceit, how your grandpa, grandma, mum, dad suffered because of someone. Then young neurons will remember. The world is a place where you must always be on guard. The people you love are victims, and you carry a debt and a lingering anger on your shoulders. No one has to say it outright. Your tone, your eyes, the details you choose are enough for their brain to learn. As they grow up, they may avoid repeating tragedy by shrinking into themselves, or unconsciously recreate the same pattern of hurt. That is a form of memory transmission. Through stories, through interpretation, not through DNA. Conversely, if in those very painful memories of your own, you choose to tell them within a different frame of meaning, not sugar-coated, still honest, but with room for dignity, for resilience, for acknowledging both your part and the role of circumstances, you are passing on a different kind of inheritance. You're saying, those days were very hard, and some people behaved wrongly, but because of that, I learned this, and I decided not to carry that bitterness into my children's and grandchildren's lives. In that case, the young brain still learns about harsh realities, but receives an added message. We are not defined forever by what others did to us. In this family there is pain, but there is also the capacity to turn pain into understanding. Think back to the stories you heard from the generation before you. Maybe your grandfather told the war stories again and again about hunger, about those who fell. Maybe your mother spoke of raising children alone, voice tight, yet still smiling. Maybe your father talked about failed business ventures, regretful but joking. Those stories and what they chose to emphasize planted in you a pattern. Life as constant struggle, or life as persistent effort. Other people as threats or as partners. Yourself as a born victim or as someone who can choose a response. Now, on this side of the road of life, you are in that same position for those who come after. Becoming aware of this is not to make you panic, nor to make you feel, I've been saying it wrong for years. It is a gentle invitation. From tonight on, each time you get the chance to tell a story, see that you're holding a soft pen that can add color to the picture inside a young person's mind. You don't have to invent fairy tales. You only need to choose from the countless memories you carry, which fragments deserve to become an inheritance. Imagine 2 grandfathers, 2 grandmothers, who have all gone through poverty, deceit, betrayal, hard labor. One, every time he tells a story, ends with, "So, don't trust anyone. That's just how life is." The other tells it truthfully, doesn't hide the tears, but ends with, "But thanks to that, I learned to cherish decent people and became careful without becoming bitter." Children growing up in those 2 homes will carry 2 very different mental maps. That is the science of social learning, of modeling. Human brains tend to synchronize with the story patterns they're fed from early on. The strange thing is, even when we don't intend it, our unhealed scratches easily bleed into the stories we tell. Someone once humiliated is likely to narrate life as a chain of injustices. Someone once abandoned easily, unconsciously, drills into children and grandchildren that men, women, are all the same. No one is trustworthy. Someone who has long feared hunger tends to frame life as a never-ending battle, making the next generation grow up amid material abundance, yet lacking a sense of safety. That's why learning to gently reframe our own stories isn't only for us to sleep better. It's also so we don't force the young to wear the heavy coat we once wore. Tonight, in this slow breathing, you can try a very gentle exercise. Imagine a grandchild sitting at the foot of your bed, asking you to tell one story from your life. If you could choose only one, just one, for them to carry forever, what would you tell? A story proving the world is terrifying, or a story showing that a human being can be hurt and still not turn to stone? A story that weighs them down, or one that lets them see that life is not easy, and feel that in this family, people choose not to pass down pure bitterness. Maybe that story still begins in pain. That day, our family lost everything. That day, Grandpa almost died on the road. That day, Grandma was treated unfairly. But let it continue with the parts you've rarely mentioned. Who helped you? How did you not collapse? What did you take from it? Besides anger, what did you decide to change in how you raised your children, so they wouldn't have to walk exactly the same road? When you add those parts, the memory is still true, but the message shifts from "we are victims" to "we are people who carry painful memories but refuse to let them create only more pain." Studies on families and communities show children who hear honest stories, structured as downward endure, go on tend to have better resilience in the face of difficulties. Not because they naively believe everything turns out fine, but because their brains already hold a template. Our people can suffer, learn, and still keep their humanity. At your age, you have enough data to tell that kind of story if you allow yourself. The hardest part is often loosening the need to prove how much I have suffered. Pain needs witnesses. That is entirely human, but each time we repeat it to the young, we can choose. Do we tell it to be understood, or to place on their shoulders the duty to avenge us? To live in our state of hypervigilance when we unconsciously use the voice? Because I went through that. You must remember, no one is good. We are turning our pain memory into law. When we use the voice, I tell you this so you understand, and I hope you will choose differently. No need to carry more hatred. We turn memory into thoughtful legacy. None of us is perfect. Surely there are times we've told it too harshly, used words too sharp. What matters is not never being wrong, but gradually recognizing how heavy the stories we repeat can be. After telling one, you can lie down and ask, if that child keeps this as a template, how will they see life? If the answer makes your heart sink, then next time, you can retell the old story with a different final line. Very small, but the young brain will hear it. Before you fall asleep, give yourself a moment to imagine. Many years from now, when you're no longer here, your children and grandchildren sum you up in one sentence. What does it say? Grandpa, Grandma, Aunt, Uncle was always telling only painful stories and saying life is just like that. Or Grandpa, Grandma, Aunt, Uncle never hid the hard things, but always told us not to let them make us bitter. That sentence doesn't need to be poetic. It is made from many ordinary nights like this one, from the way you choose to tell or end a story. So tonight, if your memory walks you through old stretches of your life, let it comfort you, and at the same time, gently pick one story, just one that, if a young person asked tomorrow, what should I remember about our family, you could hand to them. Choose a story that makes their heart expand, not shrink. And don't forget, by giving a lighter story to the young, you're also giving yourself a softer ending to a very long road. Perhaps, after all these stories about memory pathways, about scratches, about the legacy we leave to the young, the quiet question that remains is very simple. Tonight, right here in your own room, with your own heartbeat, what is one very small thing you can do so that tomorrow your brain chooses gentler paths? You're in that moment now. The night has deepened a little. The street noise has thinned. Maybe all that's left is the hum of the AC, the heater, the clock, or that particular quiet of the neighborhood where you've lived for years. Your body is tired in the way of age. Knees not as quick as before, a slight ache in your back, eyes that sting more easily, and at the same time, somewhere in your mind, threads of thought haven't dimmed yet. Your health, your children and grandchildren, those who are gone, money, an offhand remark someone made that you still remember. From here to real sleep, we usually let the mind drift wherever it wants. Think whatever, recall whatever. Like leaving a TV channel on with no one holding the remote. Tonight, let's try something else. Gently step up, take that remote for a few short minutes, and only then hand it back to the memory studio inside. The interesting hint from neuroscience is this: what appears on the edge of sleep has a chance to be treated by the brain as priority in the night's processing. Not in a mystical think it and it will manifest way, but through a very down-to-earth mechanism. The hippocampus and related networks more strongly consolidate emotional impressions, images, and thoughts marked as important around the time they start their work. If, every night as we close our eyes, we push to the front lines like everything is getting worse, I'm old and useless, tomorrow will be even harder, then the post-production studio is only doing its job, strengthening circuits of anxiety and helplessness, not because the brain is cruel, but because we just handed it a priority list like that. But what if tonight we gave it a different list? Not denying difficulties, not lying to ourselves, just adding in a few kinder, well-founded signals so the brain has a new option, one gentle self-statement, 3 small, unpretentious things to be grateful for, 1 peaceful image to close the day, all within a few minutes. Right now, as you're listening, lying down, breathing, start with a very simple sentence, in your own tone. No need for fancy words or forced positivity. It might be, today, with all my limits, I made it through. Or, I wasn't perfect, but I'm still here, and that matters. Or, that's enough for today. This sentence is like your hand placed on your own shoulder, signaling your nervous system. You can lower the alert 1 notch. For the brain, it's data. We don't need to keep every defense on full. We can shift to cleanup and repair mode. After that, very softly, invite in 3 things to be grateful for. Many people hear gratitude and think of something grand, noble, then decide I have nothing to be grateful for. In fact, the brain works well with small, concrete, tangible things. Today, you might be grateful you could still walk out to the mailbox and back. Grateful for a hot cup of tea in the morning. Grateful for a video call where you saw your grandchild's face, even if they only had a few minutes. Grateful a painkiller worked. Grateful it didn't rain just when you had to go out. Grateful for a clean blanket. None of these magically turn hard things easy, but each one, if noticed, sends your nervous system a signal. This world, besides danger, also holds support. Pick just 3. Count them on your fingers if you like. Don't force yourself into overflowing emotion. Just acknowledge, yes, this is good too. This seemingly small act has been suggested by many studies as capable of shifting how the brain tags memories, giving a bit more weight to genuine positive fragments so they don't get completely buried under the louder negative inputs. When you repeat this habit, night after night, you're telling the post-production team, these seeds matter too, please keep them. Then, after your gentle sentence and 3 gratitude points, choose a peaceful image as the curtain that closes the day. It could be a real memory, the lake where you used to fish, a field in your old hometown, an autumn road lined with red leaves you drove down for years, your mother's kitchen, the beach where your family once camped, wooden pews in church, the mountain range you can see from your window, or a simple imagined scene, a clean stretch of sand and calm sea, a forest in cool, early morning light, an armchair by a window with late afternoon sun slanting through. What matters is that when your body looks at it in your mind, it eases instead of tightening. For a few breaths, place yourself there. Notice one detail, the sound of waves, of leaves, a smell of wood, the light. No need to meditate correctly. It's like recalling a place where you once felt at ease. For your brain, this is not just fantasy. It's sensory data it can use to tune your state. Regions for spatial imagery, emotion, and memory all engage, creating a safe template as the backdrop for sleep. Now, if we sum it up, you've done 3 things. Sent yourself a kind message, chosen 3 small positive fragments, and built a calm frame, all in under a few minutes. And here's the interesting part. If you patiently do this every night for 30 days, not as a chore, but as a private ritual, what might happen inside your brain? Science doesn't promise miracles. You won't suddenly forget every wound, stop worrying, or become someone else. But there are some grounded reasons for hope. First, neural circuits that support noticing the positive, feeling safe, will be activated and strengthened more often. The brain learns through repetition. If previously every night rehearsed anxiety, now you're adding a new pattern. Second, the link between bedtime and feeling interrogated, self-accused, can gradually give way to a link between bedtime and feeling that the day is being closed in a enough for today way. Your body begins to understand. Getting into bed is when that phrase appears, when 3 easy things are named, when a gentle picture comes, not the hour when we fling open the file cabinets of indictment. Third, over a month, if you watch closely, a subtle shift may appear in the inner story you tell about your life. No longer only, I've gone through nothing but pain, but also, within those pains, there were small islands of peace I choose to honor. The habit of scanning for 3 things to be grateful for will reveal fragments you never bothered to count. If sleep then helps consolidate them, they move from trivial bits to tiny anchors. Your memory map will, very slowly, quietly, gain a few brighter lines. You may forget some nights. That's okay. The brain doesn't demand perfection. It looks at the trend. If in 30 days you do it on 15, it already differs from 0. What matters is that each time you return, you don't scold yourself. The way you treat that inconsistency is itself a neural message. At this age, I choose not to beat myself up over small things. I choose to continue. That, too, is programming. And remember, this isn't only to make you feel a bit better in the moment. It's how you prepare your own memory legacy. One day, when you look back on this stage of your life, how do you want it to appear? Only as years of worry, news, pills, self-criticism, or as a stretch in which, amid all that, you decided on one tiny ritual, where each night you stopped fighting yourself and spent a few minutes choosing what deserved to remain. Before your eyes fully close, let's draft it right now. 1 sentence for yourself. 3 small things. 1 picture. Enough for today. I have gotten through this day with everything I had. What is there to be grateful for today? Maybe I can still hear and see to witness the world. Someone texted, called, remembered me. I have a place to lie down without fearing bombs or storms. You choose the 3 that are closest to your life. The peaceful image. Where are you? On that old chair looking out at the yard? On that autumn road lined with red leaves from years ago? In a quiet church with candlelight? Or simply in this very bed, with familiar sheets and pillows, seen as a safe place, not merely a transit station for worries? Hold all of that for a few breaths, then let your brain do the rest, and carry one last question with you, very light, like a thread tied around your wrist to remind you tomorrow. If I keep choosing messages like this for my brain each night, in 30 days, 6 months, a year, will my memory map still be the same? Or will there be more paths leading toward gentleness, gratitude, and the sense that I have treated myself more kindly in this final stretch? You don't need to answer now. Let the question drift with you into sleep. The brain is far smarter than we think. When we give it soft yet clear signals, it will adjust quietly. And tonight, your only task is this. Lay your head on the pillow, loosen your shoulders. Allow yourself to believe that this closing moment of the day is also the moment you are choosing a new memory path. Softer, truer to who you are, is worthy of the long road you've walked. You can close your eyes now and let your thoughts dissolve like mist. If your mind still wants to wander, let it continue its journey to the next video, where we'll go deeper into the mysteries of the soul. And if your body is tired, let this sound lull you into sleep. No need to try, just breathe and remember everything you're searching for is already resting quietly within yourself.